between Wednesdays. Just trying to get by to the next fix. Living between Wednesdays. Prefer the comics over the Netflix.
What's up, folks? I'm your host, Konrad, on Wednesday Night Reviews, and today I'm joined by Will at Heroic Studios to talk about their new book, Super 6, that's coming out soon. Will, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I'm always excited to do these little interviews with people.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad to hear it, and I hope you enjoy. So, just to start with, for the folks out in YouTube land who have maybe never heard your name, never seen your face, or know what your books are or your work, who is Will?
My name is Will, and I'm at Heroic Studios. Heroic Studios is my comic book production company, but I've kind of branched off into other forms of media like YouTube and my podcast. So it's actually gone from Heroic Studios to Heroic Studios Media, just to kind of blend all those things together. So I'm a writer, first and foremost. I've kind of transitioned into doing comic books, drawing comic books, and also freelancing, drawing comic books for other people, as well as being a podcast host with my buddy Jay Straight and a YouTuber from time to time, where I show off some of my 3D prints that I do. I'm a big 3D printing aficionado. I love doing this stuff. So I make cosplay props, I make cosplay helmets, suits, and stuff like that. And my whole YouTube channel is kind of starting to gear towards that, as well as doing a lot of comic book reviews from things that I'm reading, and doing actually what you do, indie comic book interviews. I've done about 80 something or so interviews, and I think
Nice.
I got your information through Chris Wygan, the creator of Tights.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's a cool dude, and he came on my show, and I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago, and he's a cool dude, and he's doing a lot of cool stuff with his book Tights, and real fun guy to talk to. Yeah, there it is. I see it. Yeah, it was such a fun book to read, and I can't wait to see what he does with that concept. So yeah, that's who I am.
Awesome. Well, Will, you gave me a lot already there. I love it. As mentioned, we're here to primarily talk about your book, Super 6. So why don't you start by telling me about that and how that came to be?
Well, the Super 6 is kind of like my Avengers, so to speak. I had written a whole book series back in 2015. Actually, I wrote those way before 2015, called the Xenton Chronicles. And I got a little bit invested in those characters. And when the series finally ended, I kind of found myself just like twiddling thumbs. And I think a lot of writers can kind of vouch when you're not writing, you get a little antsy, like you need to do something. So it was to the point to where I wanted to just kind of close the chapter on writing and just kind of move on to maybe doing something else. But I got hit with more ideas that I couldn't really put to rest. So I had to put it on paper, and I started creating new stories. And then that's around the time I got hit with, why don't you do comic books? And at the time, I wasn't really into comic books. I wasn't going to the comic book store every week picking up books because I didn't really know where to start. So I started picking up Miles Morales Spider-Man back when he was in the Ultimate Universe, because I thought that was a pretty neat concept. And I started reading that, and then it just kind of, as I'm reading the book, I'm going like, you know what, I can kind of do this. I can kind of take these drawings and play with perspectives, and the way that the artist made a whole scene come alive on just a few cells was kind of amazing to me. And I thought to myself, what if I did that? What if I did that with the Xenton and actually made them into a comic book? And that's what I did. And I drew my first comic book, The Wrath of Steelers, back in summer of 2011. It was over 200 pages, and I did that. Artwork's not very great. It's not. It was my first stab at it. It was okay story-wise, but in terms of art, I didn't really like it. So I started writing another book that would not only incorporate some of my original characters, but also introduce new ones. And I've been working on, what if a character was a half demon, or what if there was twins who can share electrical powers with each other, and so on and so forth. And that's why I came up, why didn't you just introduce all these characters at once, have a veteran hero from your Xenton books in there to kind of connect everything together, I guess, and go from there. And that's why I came up with the idea of the Super 6, basically a bunch of 6 misfits, so to speak. Like, they don't know what they're doing, but this guy, Tiberius Kane, is asking them, hey, look, you guys are the best of the best, and I sort of need your help to stop the world from ending today. You guys in? So it's one of those just fun little books that I put together. And so far, I had originally did it in 2017. I couldn't figure out a way to end it properly, so I shelved it for like 3 years. And then my co-host for my podcast decided he wanted to kind of get into Comic Cons, and so we bought our booth for the amazing Las Vegas Comic Con this June. And I'm just going through all my stuff, like what can we sell? And I come across Super 6. I had already done half the damn book anyway, so I pulled it off the shelf. I gave it a read, and I remember this is really good. And so I decided, why not? Let's just do the first 40 or so pages. Let's put it out there, see how people like it, and then we'll go from there and continue it on until it's finished. So that's that. So now I'm sitting here sending pages to the printer and getting proofs and seeing how it looks. And I'm really excited to finally get this out to people because it's something that I really worked hard on, and I hope people do enjoy it.
Perfect. I love it. And one, given how multi-talented you are with everything you get your hands into and figure out the different things I've seen that you've written and what I've read from yours, frankly, that's just impressive, the sheer amount of it.
Thank you.
You mentioned, just to be clear here, so you're going to the con in June, correct? In Las Vegas?
June 17th through the 19th at the Las Vegas Convention Center.
Awesome. That's fantastic. I hope you have a great time there.
Oh, I'm so excited. I did one Comic-Con back in 2016 and it was okay, but I'm really looking forward to this one because after COVID and after all the stuff that's happened, I'm really anxious to get back out there, especially now that I can make my own cosplay prop. So
yep. Absolutely. You know what? I kind of want to touch on you about that. Touch on that about with you. On your social media, and I'll make sure we have it up so folks can go check it out on Instagram and stuff like that. You've got a lot of really cool pictures, a lot of props that you've made, but also just in general, I was curious because you've got the Power Rangers blaster behind you. The stuff that you have in your office there, is it a mix of stuff you've printed as well as stuff you've purchased?
The Power Ranger helmets are from Bandai. Those are Bandai and Hasbro official, but my Nova helmet, my Red Hood helmet, my Iron Man that opens up and closes, it's all something that I 3D printed and made by myself. So it's kind of like a mix of everything, and I wish I had more space in my office because I would have everything that I made hanging up right now.
Beautiful. And I believe I saw, just because I thought it was really cool, if I'm not mistaken, you'd made Venusaur, Blastoise, and Charizard printed, and people actually can go out and I believe you have an Etsy shop, correct?
Yeah, I have an Etsy shop where people can go out and purchase what we call little Pokéminis, where they're translucent resins of the original Kanto starter. So you get Blastoise in blue, Venusaur in green, and Charizard in red. So we're going to be selling that at the show as well. Oh. So that'll be something that you guys can come. If you don't pick up a comic book, pick up a print. There you go. You get the best of both worlds. And so that's actually been a big hit on Etsy, believe it or not. And people like it. I mean, it's something kind of catchy. So we might expand and get more Pokemon out there, like maybe the evolutions or something like that. But it's something that's really fun to do. And they look cool just doing it. If I can sit here all day and 3D print stuff all day, that's what I would do.
That's awesome. Well, you know what? I bet you the Eevee evolutions there would go fantastic and probably sell really well too.
You know what? I might just pull that off with a show. Who knows?
Absolutely. So for Super 6, as you mentioned, it's sort of like your version of the Avengers or the Justice League, your team of 6 heroes. You mentioned that stems from the Xenton Chronicles. Can you speak a little bit about what Xenton Chronicles was? And if I'm saying that wrong, do correct me.
You're on par. Xenton, I think the O is kind of like a long O sound. I'm not a grammar person. So I don't know what people that know how to pronounce or pronunciationist. I don't really know.
Me neither.
All I know is that the O is supposed to be long, but Xenton, Xenton. So the Xenton are basically my flagship superheroes that I wrote, and originally they were supposed to be a comic book, but I was not adept at drawing comics at the time. I couldn't do it, and I tried, and it just failed. And then someone just said, dude, why don't you just write a book? And I'm like, why don't I just write a book? I never done that before. So I decided to just write just started off as one book, and then I liked the way that ended. And then I started off with a second book, third book, fourth book, and it became a 4-book series. So after I finished the main series, I started coming up with ideas for smaller stories, like maybe a holiday special, like with Frostbite, or like a Halloween novel, like with Halloween Nightmare. They're the same characters, just different stories. Because I didn't feel as though the original 4 books actually touched on their heroics. I wanted to play with more villains. I wanted to play with more dynamics with other characters that appear in the books and who would later actually appear in the Super Six. So that's where the Beyond the Chronicles book series comes from. And there's actually more books that I'm working on right now that I'm trying to put out. It's supposed to be 5 books where they kind of intertwine with the main 4 books, but they're their own separate stories, like little supplemental books, like no more than like 10 chapters, literally quick, easy read. The whole story behind Frostbite is that there are these new group of humans called enhanced humans who, after a lightning strike that just attacked the world, this thing inside of them called the I gene kind of activated and gave random people these superpowers. So now you have this chick named Frostbite who is threatening to freeze over the hometown where the Xenton are. And, you know, they live in California, so something's a little weird. Doesn't snow in California. So they kind of figure it out and take this chick out. So the Frostbite is actually sort of like the prequel to where the Super Six is going. You got the idea of like these ancient ancient extraterrestrials who have been on Earth forever and they've been playing with human DNA. And then you have that faction of those extraterrestrials who have decided saying, no, you can't really do that. So we're going to create our own wave of enhanced humans here to fight yours. And hopefully they'll cancel each other out and humanity will be destroyed, blah, blah, blah. So the main character of the Super Six is Tiberius Kane, who's actually this boy genius who developed the ability to teleport. He has teleportation capabilities that he was developing for the government. And the person who brought him in to work on that, Senator Harris, who's secretly an extraterrestrial, that's no secret, no spoiler, it's kind of obvious. She was trying to use his technology to bring her faction of her aliens to Earth to finish off humanity. And Ty kind of caught wind of that. And he tried to stop her, but as a result, you know, government officials, she was like, he did it. And so he went into hiding and has been monitoring the timeline ever since, because he was able to modify his teleportation device in order to kind of poke into the future and saw what was going to happen. So he's been living outside of reality in this secret bunker where no one can get to him. And he's been monitoring everything coming up to the point to where this day is where this happens. So now he's gathering the 6 heroes from just random parts. I wouldn't say throughout time, but they're taken from within days of each other. So they're plucked from the timeline, brought here, and they're like, okay, I don't know what happened, but I'm being chased down because one of them's a half demon and he was about to die. And he's like, you know what? You saved me, bro. I'm going to help you. So that's where that kind of comes from. So the Super Six is basically a group of heroes trying to stop something that Ty knows is going to happen. But the fun part about it is that he can't really tell them what's going on because he's afraid they won't help him, and so on and so forth. So you're getting all these heroes from different stories, and they're plucked right in the middle of their stories too. And I kind of reference that a lot. So you'll understand when you're reading something like Crimson Birth, which is the story about the half demons, where one of the characters is like just not in the timeline anymore because no one can find him. So that's where he is. So it's a lot of fun. I worked really hard on it, and I'm very nitpicky. So plot holes, I try not to come up with, like, I try to cover every plot hole, but you know, sometimes it's just really impossible to do so.
That's fair. I mean, that sounds really cool. I definitely like the amount of thought that you're putting into this, and like the idea of, just like you said, you know, someone's halfway through their story and then they're gone to join this team, possibly against their will, or maybe, you know, like they say from their perspective, it seems like they're being saved or something. I like that. It's really fun.
Yeah, it was something, and I kind of worked on the teams a lot, and I think picking it up again after being shelved, I changed some of the names too, and it's just like when you're creating these interwoven plots that connect with each other, you got to make sure that everything is consistent. Otherwise, people will find out and they will read and be like, well, that doesn't make sense. It's the consistency here doesn't work. And so it was really stressful because I hadn't really finished writing the Super Six when I put it off the shelf. I knew up here how it was going to end, but I didn't know on paper how it was going to end. So I just pulled the script down, made sure I read through it, made sure that I remember everything that I wanted to do. And I made little notes saying, on this page in this book, this is where this happens. So make sure you reference that there so people will know to connect the two stories together. So yeah, it's a lot of work and it's sometimes super stressful, but I think at the end it'll pay off. And I think the people reading will absolutely love it, hopefully.
Perfect. And speaking of which, because you, as mentioned, you've put a lot out there. Is everything? Or what's the best way for people to get your work and support you?
Most of my books, like the Xenton Chronicles, they're on Amazon. You actually get the first book for free, and then if you like that one, you can go ahead and buy 2, 3, and 4, and then of course the two Beyond the Chronicles, Halloween Nightmare and Frostbite. Those are there on Amazon. As for the Super Six, I'm working on currently putting that on pre-order, and you can order copies through my website once I get that up and running. And you can either have it shipped to you, or if you're going to the Las Vegas Comic Con, you can go ahead and pick it up from the booth. So that book won't be released until June 17th. So it gives you plenty of time to pre-order. I'm working on putting together a small little sample set of pages that you guys can go and read. And then if you want to pre-order, go ahead and do that. And then my other story, Ultima, the Legend Untold, that is going to be going into print pretty soon. But if you guys want to go ahead and read that, I have the entire first volume, all 12 chapters, on my website, heroicstudiosmedia.com, and you can go ahead and just read to your little heart's content. That's free. And then, like I said, I'm working on getting that into print and possibly selling that at the convention too.
Beautiful. I actually do want to touch on that because I went through it and as a part of doing my research to be able to talk to you. I actually read the bulk of Ultima. I didn't quite get to the end of it for rather what's online. That is again Ultima, Oltima, the Legend Untold.
Mm-hmm.
So what I found very interesting was you being so multi-talented there. Ultima is a manga or a manga.
Yeah, it's a manga style comic book. I did that for a reason. Not that I wanted it to be a manga, but I decided to make it a manga. One, because I had been reading manga a lot at the time. I think this is when we were locked down in COVID. So I was reading Bleach, Naruto, Attack on Titan. And I really like the simplicity of the art style, but it also brings out a lot of the detail and emotions in the characters, which I find rather amazing that these artists are able to do that. And that's why I wanted to kind of take my stab at it. And if you've been reading what you have, you'll see the art is slowly evolving with each chapter. It's like from here to like here. But another reason is that I didn't want to hire like a colorist because I mean, I do it all. I could do the inking, I could do the drawing, I could do the coloring, I could do lettering, but just to do one page with all those aspects, and it takes forever. And this is something that I really wanted to do and get out as soon as possible. So I forewent the coloring route and just stuck with doing a complete manga because this was a story that I had written a while ago and wanted to kind of get out there. So I went the manga route because it was easier to produce, it was easier to draw, and it was easier to finish. I was able to knock out for a while a chapter every month. So I was drawing a page a day, just knocking it out.
Nice. So I am curious when it comes to having worked in like just plain written form, like a fiction book itself, now manga as well as comics. For the comics themselves, Super Six, are you doing the art as well, or have you got an artist helping you?
I do the drafts, and then I have my ink artist. His name is Ronnie Reyes. He's over in the Philippines. He does the inking, so he makes the drafts that I do look really good with the inks, and then he sends them back to me, and then I color them and put in all the effects, and I do the lettering. So usually when I'm overwhelmed with a project, I usually just give it to him. Like, hey man, color this, or hey man, I need a cover. Can you do this for me? Or I need a few pages inked, and I'll handle the color. Usually that's how we operate, and I would give it to him because, like I said, when you're a single person working on a book, it's a lot of time. It takes a lot of work to kind of finish up from drafting to penciling to inking to coloring to lettering and making sure you're proofreading it and everything flows the right way. So having Ronnie, and if he's watching, having Ronnie has been a lifesaver. The guy is very talented. He does a really great job with his work, and he just takes what I'm doing and just amplifies it times 10. And I'm when I'm seeing the inks, the raw inks, I'm like, oh my god, this is gonna be so much fun to color. I can't wait to get there.
Awesome. And how do you feel working in the various, I'll just call it mediums, I guess, has sort of impacted how you tell stories?
Elaborate on that a little bit more.
So like the difference in writing a book, right, where
Mm-hmm.
you have to describe each scene and all that stuff, to a manga, which is a lot more. When I compare like comics to manga, I find manga is a lot more fast paced.
Right.
It's definitely more expressive.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have comics which tend to be a little more detail dense, in comparison.
Right.
How has working between the three mediums sort of informed how you create the next project?
Honestly, it's a little bit more of the same for me because I was writing a chapter today in an upcoming book that I'm working on, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, oh, I forgot I left off at this part. I don't know what's going to happen. A lot of the people that ask me like, well, how do you do to get started? It's like, you just write, just get in there and write. And so that's what I did. And then as I'm going and I'm knocking out line after line, it just started kind of coming natural to me again. So writing is kind of like my forte. That's like my bottom line. I can write you a story and make you want more of it. I think that's my gift. I've had people tell me that. I'm not trying to be like a narcissist or anything like that. I'm still learning new tricks and tips of the trade. Like if I went back and read my very first the Xenton Chronicles book, I wouldn't do that because I'm terrified. I'm terrified to read it and look and see how the writing is compared to what I can do today. So writing is my forte. But when I'm writing it, I'm also envisioning it in my head, like the scene, little details, what the time on the clock says, what this color of the cup over in the table looks like. I'm looking at all these details and I'm like, at some point, maybe I can do a manga or a comic book because when you're writing a book, you're imagining a scene. You're putting yourself in that situation so that way you can give the reader the maximum optimized experience when it comes to describing that scene. Comic books are just that on paper, but with pictures. You're just breaking down each scene in very detailed pictures. So whatever you write, I can take a scene from the Xenton Chronicles and draw a page, and that's what it is. So it's kind of, in my opinion, more of the same thing. It's just when I'm writing the script for a comic book, I leave out those minute details because I already know in my head what it's going to look like. But for a book, I try to be as detailed as possible so the person who may not be familiar with certain aspects or characters can get filled in about a paragraph or so on what this person is doing or where they're at or what this place looks like. Same with a manga, same with a comic book. Except, these comic book and manga are more visual as opposed to a book where you have to sit there and kind of help visualize. And that's your job as a writer. You want to help the person visualize as much as possible what you're trying to convey through your work. So it's a little bit of the same for me. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, for sure. It's always fun to ask that. So I've had the chance to interview a few people who have worked across multiple mediums. Whether it's someone who's just a comic artist that does analog inks and paper or digital, and I always like to ask how does the other side teach you and change how you work with one or the other. Same thing with writing. It's interesting always to ask. How does writing a normal book impact writing a comic, impact writing a manga? So yeah, I definitely think that answered my question. That's really cool.
I know some people they kind of see it the other way around. Like sometimes writing a comic is kind of like inspires writing the book, or some people don't even associate those two things at all. But it's helped me, and I've gone from writing novels up to drawing comic books to now doing manga, and it's a little bit, like I said, to me it's the same because I can do all three of those things interchangeably without having to change anything in terms of the processes that go with it. So that's just me. I don't know how other people do it.
Oh, we're all different from what I've learned. And again, so all the stuff you've worked on so far, people can pick up on Amazon. The Xenton Chronicles, they can get the first book for free, and then the other 3 that are currently out, they can pick up at their leisure. And then in June, Super 6, which is sort of a sequel, they'll be able to get in, well, if they come and meet you in Las Vegas.
Yeah, they can
online.
Yeah, they can come and meet me in Las Vegas, or I know that once the pre-orders are done, once I get that up and running, I'm going to send them out to people, hopefully, and they get there, June 17th, so they can have it as, I'm setting up for this show. So
Oh,
that's the plan, but, sometimes the plan doesn't go according to plan
perfect.
sometimes. So I'm going to do my best to get those books out to people, and if they're, locally living next to me, I probably would just go hand it to them just to make sure that they have it so they can, read it on the day of. And of course, it'll be digital copies too. You can get it digitally too. So, yeah.
Beautiful. I love it. So with the Super Six, what kind of story are you trying to tell?
It's a fun intro to a lot of the characters who are going to be having their own books later on down the line. So
Okay.
So it's a lot of fun. Tiberius Kane is kind of like one of those characters that I wrote after I finished the Xenton Chronicles. He actually appeared in another subsequent book that I wrote and put on the shelf, and I liked this character, so I decided to take him down. Fun fact: Tiberius Kane, his likeness and the way he looks is completely different from how I designed him. So
Oh.
funny story. I designed Tiberius Kane to kind of resemble, I want to say maybe Roxas from Kingdom Hearts a little bit because I like the spiky
Okay.
hair look.
Yeah.
But I couldn't really quite nail it. So I take my draft and I give it to Ronnie. I'm like, hey, I need you to help me work on Tiberius Kane's look. And he took it and he drew it and he came back and I'm looking at it and I go, oh, this is great. And then I look at Ronnie and I'm like, bro, you drew yourself. he subtly inserted himself into my book and I'm looking at it and I'm like, this looks really good. And I think I'm going to keep it the way it is. So every time he's drawing and inking pages, he's drawing himself into the book. And I'm like, oh, you nifty little bugger, I see what you did there. And I like the way that he dressed himself too. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to leave it that way. Tiberius Kane, this is you. Okay. So
nice.
Really nice little funny story there. But I came up with Tiberius Kane as this boy genius, and he's just doing his thing. His original incarnation was not what I had originally written. He wasn't this brooding person trying to get back at this senator who ruined his life. He was just a kid who was really smart, who came up with his own type of technology and was just trying to meet other heroes from across the world that he met, trying to recruit them just normally. So this is something that I took Tiberius Kane from and made him the focal point of the story because I liked the way that he did things and I wanted to kind of test my skills on making his technology and drawing it to convey to the audience as much as possible what it is he's trying to do. So that is what that is. The other heroes is Jason. He's one of the Xenton. He's personally my favorite character of all of them that I've come up with.
Okay.
But he's just this surfer boy, beach bum. He doesn't like to do much but surf. I'm from California, and that's what I like to do. I like to hang out and
okay.
chill at the beach. So he's my favorite character, and he's just kind of like the laid back party of the group or person of the group. But at the same time, he's very resourceful and he's actually fairly smart. I'm actually working on a story that is centered around him in one of the Beyond the Chronicles books. So I won't get into that, but it's going to be centered around him and a little bit more of a character development for him. So you got to give him his spotlight. So he's there. He's one of the veteran heroes that out of the Xenton who are considered the world's first superheroes. And he is part of that veteran group. I mean, at this point in the story, he's helped stop the giant griffin from pummeling the city. He stopped a rogue alien cyborg. He stopped frostbite. He's helped stop a worldwide alien invasion. So he's pretty experienced. So with Tiberius Kane looking at, they're looking at the Xenton and his computer AI Sevi. He's like, I know you wanted somebody experienced, but what about the Xenton? And Ty is over here. He's like, look, there's like 5 of them. I only need 1. So I'm sure any one of the 5 would be fine because they've done all this stuff together. So Jason was the one who got picked randomly, and I wanted to choose him for a reason because he's the most experienced, but the way he presents himself in the story, you're like, are you sure this guy has what it takes? Like, yeah, no, he has what it takes. He's that. So the other one is Tony. He's a half demon. He's currently on the run from a secret organization who's hunting down all these demon prime bloods, and he's the offspring of one of the 7 demons from hell. So his vice is greed, and he has the ability to move things with his mind. He can have his eyes glow. He can grow claws and fangs. He turns into an actual demon from time to time, and he's kind of like the loose cannon of the group, but he's learning how to control it somewhat. So Ty just figured, you know what, we might need a one-man wrecking crew here. Let's make sure we can control him from time to time. The other 2 are what I call the overcharge. They're Cassandra and Oliver Higgins. They're twins, and they were hit by a lightning storm, the same lightning storm that created Frostbite. It gave them the power to manipulate electricity, and their dynamic between the 2 of them is that they're able to exchange currents with each other. So they're able to turn it. Yeah, so they have electrical power. They're able to turn into electrical currents and get into any system, anything that they want to do. And they actually have the ability to power each other up, and they're known as the overcharged. And the last member of the group is a guy named Andre Trice. He's known as the Light Runner. I haven't really fully figured out his name, but they call him the Light Runner. And he was also hit with a solar flare that created the second wave of enhanced humans. And he's been imbued with something called the ultralight, which allows him to basically manipulate photons. And he uses that ability to run really fast. So he can manipulate light and he can run really fast. So those are my 6 heroes. Brand new at the game except for Jason. So we're going to see how this goes. Hopefully they don't blow anything up.
Well, a little bit along the way would be fun, though.
Just a little bit, yeah.
That sounds super cool. You've clearly drawn on some inspiration, sort of in pulp culture most recently, with the lightning strikes. That sort of reminds me of the Flash a little bit. The solar flare kind of reminds me of like the Fantastic Four origins. From the designs of the Xentons, they almost reminded me of like Power Rangers, I want to say.
Right.
I absolutely love the wide variety of stuff you're drawing inspiration from to create your really unique characters. And the 10-page preview you sent me of Super 6, I really dug your half demon there, especially when he sort of hulked out and become this huge yellow monster, glowing red eyes, big claws. I think it will be a hell of a lot of fun for whoever picks it up, and I hope they get a swing by, see you, get a signed copy, because I think they're going to enjoy it a lot.
Oh, for sure. I hope they do too. And a lot of creators, that's one of their biggest fears. You know, they spend all this time and energy into drawing a comic books, and that one question just kind of lingers out. You know, what if they don't like it? You know. And I've been doing this for, I don't know, over 10 years now. Just, I like to tell stories. That's my primary, like if I don't do anything in a day, I like to even just come up with a new concept for a story that may or may not make it to paper. You know, my brain works that way. I cannot write. So for a creator or a writer or whatever it is you do, someone saying that this book is great. I love this book. I love the way you did your story. It really hits home. It really makes us feel good about what we're doing because we put a lot of our time and effort into it. And, you know, a lot of us work day jobs. We have a family. And, you know, when we get a chance to sit down and write and actually finish something and say, okay, we're going to take this and we're going to put it out there. You're putting your heart and soul out there to the public. And there will be some people who don't like what you're doing. There will be some people who are above and beyond what you're doing. But if it's like 1 or 2 people that message me on Instagram that say, hey, I read Ultima the Legend Untold, and I just want to tell you that I really liked it, and I can't wait for volume 2. When is it coming out? That means the world to me. And those are the kind of things that I screenshot and I throw out there because I'm not doing this for me. Like, I already know how the story ends. You know, I wrote it. I want to be able to give you guys something to enjoy and to get you something to look forward to, in the back of your mind. You know, it might not be a monthly release or anything like that, but if you pick up one of my books and you enjoy it, hey, you have a whole 6-book series out there that you can read to keep yourself occupied while I'm sitting here busy at work. uh, making sure that I polish up the next story that I'm about to put out. And for any creator, that's my advice to you. Just make sure you do the right job. Tell the story you want to tell, because it means all the difference out there to people who are reading your work.
That's beautiful, man.
Thank you.
Every you know what? Every once in a while when I speak to people, obviously I want to show off the work, let people know what's going on. I get a gem like that. I get something where someone just says something that is unexpected and just wonderful. So thank you.
No problem, man. That's what I'm here for. You told me you love the Ultima the Legend Untold. I'm like, thank you. Thank you. I worked hard on that. I'm so glad that it indulged you. And I think there was another girl. Her name is Dakota Love. She found me on Facebook, and I post up, chapter updates back when I was releasing them week by week. And she read it all in one go, and she messaged me on Facebook. I had no idea who this girl is, mind you. Just bing on my phone. I go, "Who's Dakota Love?" And she goes, "Hey, I just read Ultima the Legend Untold, and I just got to say that I'm completely obsessed with your work right now. When is Volume 2 coming out?" And I'm sitting here like taking my couple months break off, and just like, you know what? I guess my break is over now. I guess I got to get back to work. So Dakota, if you're watching or listening, shout out to you, girl. Much love.
Awesome. One thing I did want to ask, how many things right now would you say you have on the go when it comes to what you're creating? Roughly.
How much time you got there, man? So I have a whole, so I have written, hang on, let me count these really quick. Let's just say I've written close to about maybe 13 books. Now, not full-length books. Some of them are novellas, some of them are full-length. But all together, in terms of just books, we're not talking comic books, just books.
Yeah, I've mean written, like a book.
Yeah, like a book. There you go. About 15 books. But of those 15 books, I've only published about 6 of them. Now, with me getting ready for the show, I'm combing through all the stuff that I've worked on that I might have started, never finished, and I'm reading, or I'm going back and I'm picking up books that I finished, right? And I'm like, oh, this is really good. Like I picked up another book last night that I finished that takes place after the Xenton Chronicles, but still deals with the main character, so to speak. And I read all 10 chapters, and I'm like, this is really good. I think I'm going to publish this, like put it on pre-order. And so I'm working on that now. Since it's already written, it's already edited. I just need to kind of get a cover design. So Ronnie, if you're listening, you got another job on you that you need to do. I need to get a cover for that. So then I pull down Crimson Birth, which is the story that, introduces these half demons. I had wrote this years ago, and I pulled it off, and I'm like, okay, I remember this being really good. So I read through it. I'm like, this is nice, I need a cover for this book. So altogether, I'm working on getting those 2 books set up for pre-order. They might be on sale for pre-order in the near future. I'm also working on finishing up Volume 2, writing of Ultima the Legend Untold. I'm still writing that story. I've pulled down some of the Beyond the Chronicle books that I have put together that I wrote the plots about, or maybe started the manuscript but haven't finished. I'm working on figuring out what I want to do in terms of whether I want to finish that or put it back on the shelf. So I think altogether 1, 2, 3, 4, Super 6. I think I'm working on 5 consecutive projects at once. Some of them take precedent over the other because a lot of those are going to be at the show. So you really got to know how to manage your time.
Oh, absolutely.
When you have a creative brain like that keeps on going, doesn't stop, make sure you do budget your time out as much. Even if you're just writing a few lines a day, just budget your time, because you will get overwhelmed and burnt out really fast. So to answer your question, currently right now, out of all the things that I've worked on, I'm currently working on about 5 separate projects, just writing the stuff out. I'm not drawing anything or anything like that. I'm just finishing up, either if it's a manuscript or if I'm just working on plot points and the outline for a story that I want to finish that I started, 5-10 years ago. So it's a lot.
It's interesting because why I asked is because in the research I've done on Jeff Lemire, the comics creator,
Mhm.
because ideally I'd like to interview Jeff at some point. Um, he works in a very similar fashion, where he'll write a draft or write a manuscript and then go, cool, this is done. It goes in a filing cabinet, close it. I'll work on
Mhm.
something else for a bit, and then, you know, a year, 6 months, 2 years down the road, he'll pull it out, reread it, and go, "Yep, okay, cool. Let's edit it and get it going." So it's interesting to speak to another person like that that is so, I don't know. You're full of the creative juices. You've got it going, firing on all cylinders, pumping out books like crazy. Because I don't think I've yet spoken to someone like yourself who does that way. So it was just fascinating.
And it's really what I'm trying to say here. It's very one of those things that you got to catch yourself writing the same kind of story over again. You know what I mean? Like you mentioned the Flash earlier. Let's take like the CW Flash.
Yeah.
Most of their episodes is like, okay, new villain of the week. The Flash gets beat. They come up with something to beat the villain. They beat the villain, and then it's a really simple cut and dry.
Yeah.
And it just goes on kind of like what Smallville used to do, just on and on and on and on again. You find yourself writing in that style, but you also have to remember that you want to explore new areas that maybe you didn't think your characters would find themselves in, but if you can figure out a way to make that work, then you're doing not only yourself a service, but you're also giving the fans something new. Because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, writing the same kind of story where, oh, there's a new villain. Okay, here our heroes are going to take on this new villain. New villain proves stronger. Now the characters have to figure out a way to beat the villain. They do so and they beat the villain. And I kind of learned that when I was writing Frostbite, because I like to do what J.J. Abrams of the mystery box, but I do it, I do it differently in the sense of like, I'm pointing over here. This is who it is, but there's a misdirection over here. And that's really fun to do because I was going back to the Flash, I was a fan of like who was Zoom or who was Savitar, like or who was the Reverse Flash, even though it was kind of obvious who Reverse Flash was. Um, but it was just all these people when we were coming to like who Zoom was or who Savitar was. You had all these people on YouTube coming up with theory videos trying to figure out who these two speedsters were, and I thought it was so fascinating of all the eagle-eyed viewers out there who would come up with these wild theories that would suggest that Ronnie Raymond is actually Savitar. You're like, wait, what? And then they explain how it's true. You're like, well, maybe. It was so funny that people did that. And yeah, so I kind of took from that and wanted to kind of play around, and that's what I did with Frostbite. I'm not going to give away the twist or ending, but people think that people think Frostbite is one person, but no, it's actually a bigger story and it actually ties into the Super Six. So those are two separate stories. I'm just going to keep that there. But when you read Frostbite, you kind of get the idea of what I'm doing. So when you're writing these things, you want to make sure that you're exploring different writing options, different writing styles, going over to introducing a new villain and how our heroes are going to defeat the villain or whatever it is it might be. It gets really tired after a while, and you got to figure out a way to sort of kind of make it more engaging with the readers. Otherwise, after about book 3 or 4, they're just going to stop reading the books you put out. You got to keep it interesting. So yeah, there's a lot that goes in, especially when you're creating a intertwined story like I'm doing. You got to make sure that whatever you're doing, it all has to lead back to where the main story takes place, so it all connects, and that's usually the challenge. But it is what it is, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it seems like you're doing a fantastic job so far, and I look forward to seeing what comes next for you.
Thank you.
So we've talked about your books a lot, and at the beginning of the interview, we very briefly touched on who Will is. So I always like to get to know the creators a little bit better. So a fun, easy question, especially with what's just behind you. Will, in all of your collection of books, comics, toys, paraphernalia, all that stuff, what is your like thing that when someone's like, what's your coolest thing? what's the thing you like to show them, no matter how big or how small? What is like the thing that you're kind of, this makes my collection what it's special?
Man, I mean, I'm looking around my office right now, and there's a lot. Oh, you know what? I would probably have to say my Red Ranger helmet from Bandai. Um, when Bandai announced that, I was like, I gotta get my hands on one. And then they announced the Green Ranger one, and my wife was like, "Don't you want the Green Ranger?" I go, "No, I want red." So I love my Red Ranger helmet because that was one of the first things I ever gotten. But it feels like that is not the answer that I want to give.
Oh, okay.
I feel like that there's something else in this room that help. You know what it is? I know exactly what it is. I have this statue. I'm looking at it right now on my bookshelf. It's called a thinking man, and it's a wooden statue of a man going like this.
Okay.
So my grandmother went to Africa 30 years ago, something like that. And she brought me back this thinking man. And she goes, listen, whenever you are stuck with an idea, you sit there and you look at that thinking man and you'll get an idea. And I have had that thing with me ever since I was about 11. Doesn't matter if I was in my first apartment, if I was in my dorm room at college, if I'm in this room right now. I've always had that thinking man with me. And I think that is probably where I get most of my ideas from. I'm staring at it right now and I'm getting ideas. I need to stop because I don't have the time to sit here and jot down another idea or something. But yeah, I would have to say that because without that, I wouldn't be the creator that I am today. And I still have it. And it's straight from the motherland, straight off of the African continent. Not really sure what country in Africa, but that's where she got it from. And I still have it.
That's cool. Is it safe that you would be able to show us it, or should I'll have you send me a picture afterward, maybe?
I can go grab it right now. Give me a second.
If it's safe to do so, yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So this is what it looks like right here. With a nice statue, and he stares back at you like, okay, what are you thinking? And I used to stare at him every day and just come at with ideas, and then they would just flow. It's kind of like a thinking buddy. You bounce ideas off of him, and he just kind of doesn't move, but you kind of see it in his face, like that could work, but try something else. Yeah, I've had this for a while, and it's still in pretty good condition.
I think it's really beautiful, actually. I like that there's nothing connecting the chest with the leg.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah, when I first got it, I thought it was kind of creepy, but after having it for almost 25 years, it's one of those things that's like, I take them with me everywhere I go, and I keep them in my office, and I would keep them on my desk, but my cat likes to jump up on my desk and he knocks them over all the time. So I just keep them on my bookshelf, and when I'm just in here and I'm stuck up here, just look in that direction, and there he is, staring back at me, saying, "What do you want? What ideas you got?" So that's him.
I love it.
Yeah, man. That's it.
That's cool, man.
Thanks.
And another question I always like to ask, sort of, I typically end my interviews with the same two questions. So second last question. What is Will reading right now? What is it that you're enjoying, whether it's a fiction book, whether it's comics, webtoons? What's keeping you occupied?
Currently, I am reading the Boom Studios Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Like anything that Boom puts out, I get because it's great. I'm checking out King Spawn, which is really great. I love Todd McFarlane and what he's doing with Spawn.
Okay.
I'm reading a bunch of indie books. The last one I just read was Woodland Creatures from, oh no, I forgot her name. She's a really cool chick from Colombia, and she did a really great job with this book. I just read that. Common America. I don't know if you interviewed the guys from who did Common America, but I just got their latest Kickstarter, so I'm reading that. But okay. I actually just picked up Radiant Black, like the first volume. Ooh. That's really good. I'm all over that. So they said if you're missing Invincible and you're a fan of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, you should read Radiant Black. And I'm like, here's my money, dude. Let me see what that's about. and I kid you not, I knocked that book out in like an hour, and I'm like, this is really.
Oh wow!
So I went ahead and got a Radiant Red, which is issue number 1 today.
Oh,
and then Rogue Sun, which apparently takes place in the same universe. I don't know. I mean, Kyle Higgins, whatever he's doing, whatever he's smoking, keep smoking it, bro, because you write great stories, man.
Yes, he does. Yeah. Truthfully, immediately beside me is my reading pile for comics, and in there is the first 6 issues of Radiant Black. Because a friend of mine picked it up and loved it, and he's like, "You got to read this." I was like, "All right, let's pick it up."
It's so good. I'm not gonna say anything about it, but I'm gonna let you read it for yourself. It's really good. It's at the compilation. Volume 1,
the trade paperback.
Yeah. That's what I got because I don't think they had any back orders. So immediately after I finished Volume 1, I called the comic book store. I was like, "Hey, order Volume 2 and put issue 13 in my box, please, because this is really good." So nice. I'm really looking forward to reading like something new. You know, it's something even though it's reminiscent of Power Rangers and Invisible, it's something that's fresh. It's something that has, you know, it relates to us, or I don't know how old you are, but I'm a millennial, quote unquote, and it kind of targets us and like what we're going through in terms of life and, you know, what people expect. And it's one of those books that you just pick up and you're like, man, this dude is like in his 30s and he's a superhero. That'd be dope if that happened to me. That'd be cool. So it's a breath of fresh air, and you don't get a lot of that these days. What's coming out, you know, and that's what I like. And that's why I like reading indie books, because these people, they come up with the wildest ideas and somehow are able to convey that to you. And you're like, man, this is really good. And as far as I'm concerned, Image, it's still an independent comic book studio. So it's Boom. They're still independent comic book studios. And their books are just, they're great for what they have now. You know, I don't even buy Marvel and DC anymore because I just can't get into their books as much. So.
Yeah, I was on TikTok earlier, and someone had one of those videos where it's like, start a comic book fight in 1 sentence. And the person stitched it with, Batman fans right now are exhausted or burnt out from Batman because it's not original anymore.
It's not.
Right? Like, as someone who's loved Batman for all my life, I grew up on the animated series. I started collecting floppy comics individuals in 2011, 52. You know, Batman's been my life basically, and it's like, yeah, at times I'm reading Batman and I'm like, you know what, I need to put Batman down for like a while, and that's why like, yeah, in my pile I've got a year's worth of Batman because I just haven't touched it.
Yeah, I will say that the latest Batman movie, the Batman was actually, it was good. Yeah. Now, I'm not like I know some people like gung-ho Batman. I'm not gung-ho Batman. Like I like Batman because he's Batman. You can't not like Batman.
He's just cool.
Right. It's like you can't not like Spider-Man because it's Spider-Man. But the Batman movie was a different take on, you know, what we've had. And I liked it. I know some people didn't really like it as much, or they're on the fence, like the guys over at Geeks and Gamers, they're not sure like if they liked it or if they hated it. They're kind of like in the middle. I guess that's where I'm at, because I'm not like super into Batman, but I know Batman, I know the lore and all the stuff. So to me, it was a breath of fresh air. But at the back of my head, I'm like, do we really need another Batman movie? Did we really need that? So, you know, the market is just oversaturated with just reboots and like sequels and stuff. And it's kind of scary because with the Batman, it's proven that Hollywood can get away with it. You know, they can just go ahead and rehash something and people will go and see it. And I'm like, that's great. But like a movie like Tenet that I'm still trying to fucking figure out. Excuse my French.
Oh my God.
I'm still trying to figure out what the hell happened in that movie.
Yeah. I saw Tenet in a drive-in theater, and the moment my brain got over the filmed in backwards thing, and I started trying to wrap my brain around the actual story, I was like, wait a minute, what? And it's this weird meshed story, and I'm like, oh my God.
It was like time traveling, but it wasn't like Doc Brown and the DeLorean instant time traveling. It was like you saw the people literally running back in time. So
yeah,
I think that was the first movie my wife and I saw after, pandemic was over and the theaters were open up. So we went to go see it. And I'm in the movie theater like, what? And she's just like in the chair, like, this is really good. And I'm like, okay, when we get home, you're gonna have to explain to me what the hell we just saw, because I had no clue.
Mm-hmm.
And she sat me down like kindergarten. She goes, okay, let me explain to you what happened. And then after she explained it, I'm like, I still don't get it.
Yeah, like what?
Yeah, I was so confused, but it was like that original idea that really jumped out to me. And was it Christopher Nolan that did that, right?
Yep.
It was one of those things that I'm like, this is something that I like to see. Like,
Yeah.
forget about me not understanding the concept of what he's trying to do. The story and the way he presented it was actually on point, and I really like that. And I want to see more originality coming out of Hollywood with some of these sci-fi adventure films. It's every day we get like, oh, new Marvel movies out. I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. Another Marvel movie. Can we get something like, I don't know, Hancock 2? I've been waiting for Hancock 2 for
that'd
15
be awesome.
years. Yeah, right? That'd be great, but it is what it is. So originality, I like original ideas, which is why I'm reading a lot more manga and independent comics, and it gets the creative juices flowing. Like I'm reading Radiant Black, and I'm like, I like that concept. I might revisit that and maybe mold it into my own little thing later on, but it is what it is for what we got. So yeah, man.
Exactly. No, you know what? And I absolutely agree. That's why I started definitely liking more indie stuff in the last couple of years. Tights, Trakovi, just some of them that I've read and the people I've spoken with, yourself included now. There's definitely a greater variety of interesting and new stories that are out there as compared to, just like you said, a reboot, a rehashing every 2 years or whatever. So thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you. I was talking to someone on Twitter, and we were in a debate about, where Marvel and DC is sort of standing in terms of like comic book sales. And I remember watching an interview with one of their writers saying that, something that would have got a book canceled like 3 years ago is actually looking like it's fantastic numbers today, and that literally struck a chord with me. It's like, okay, so Marvel and DC, they're not really doing like extravagant numbers. They're actually taking what would have canceled a book 3 years ago and saying, okay, this is a hit. And I'm like, okay, so this person actually, I said, what if Marvel and DC came up with more original ideas, not just taking a superhero or, giving him a different skin tone or giving him another gender or anything like that? What if they came up with, 100% full on original ideas? And he replied, they won't do that because it's a risk on their part. And I completely understand. So I brought up the indie comics community. You have all these people like Chris with Tights and Cyberfrog and all these other guys who are just cranking out really great stories. And he told me, like, well, why haven't I heard of these people? And I go, well, you might not have heard of these people, but they're really making a huge splash in the comic book industry, and they're making really good money, and they're able to live off of their work, which is, my dream and any other content creator's dream is to be able to do that. So it really, it hit me like, all you do, most of these people, they're on the Marvel and DC pipe, that's all they know. But, broaden your horizon, get on YouTube, get on Twitter, Google some of these books that people are trying to promote. They're out there. These people are out there. You might not have heard of them. And I'm sure the next indie book that I see on Twitter that looks really good, and I've seen tons, and I feel bad because I'm not able to get them all, but I see them everywhere and they look fantastic. These people put a lot of work into what they're doing. They're out there, and it's up to you and me to kind of bring that out, saying, hey, these people are out here. We need to bring them to the forefront because they spend countless hours and time just grinding away, making sure that their books and their stories are just on point. So again, look for these guys because they're there. They're there. They're not hiding. Trust me, they're not hiding.
Oh, no, definitely not. Like one thing I found when it comes to looking for people with comics, so one, Kickstarter and just Google, or not Google, but go into Kickstarter and just put in comics. You'll find some really cool stuff out there. Literally, you could, though, Google funded Kickstarted comics, because you'll see what's completed. You'll see a link to the website, and then you just buy it and have it like that in digital. And I think that's a great way for people out there to be able to get those comics now. And it's not, I have to wait for them to finish their comic in 6 months. It's here's my finished printed digital book. Enjoy.
Yep.
But I think you're absolutely right. And another thing that I'll put out there for the folks listening in is bug your local comic shops for indie comics.
Yes.
Ask them their local, who's making comics in the area, who is here that I can meet. Because I promise you, there is a handful of them at least that are willing to get indie comics into that shop and you can enjoy them.
Yeah, that's what when I was interviewing Chris, Creative Tights, I follow him on social media and he's posting up all these pictures of his book in comic book stores. And I'm like, bro, how did you do that? And it was like so simple. He just took like maybe 5 or 10 comic books, took them to the indie comic book store. He's like, hey, listen, just, buy these stack of comic books. And if they sell, great. If they don't, great. I'll sell them to you for X amount of dollars. And I'm like, dude, he did it in the most nonchalant, simplest way because most comic book stores, like you said, they want indie creators in their stores. They want them. It's just some creators aren't willing to put themselves on a line like that for fear of rejection from these stores. And I'm like, dude, he just went in there with a stack of books. Look, I got 10 books here. I don't know, give me $60 and put it on your shelf. And they were like, okay. And I'm like, that's it?
That's it.
That's it? That's all you have to do? Because I don't care if my book sells or not. Being able to take a picture of your book in a comic book store is awesome. Even if you just go in and just take it out of your pocket and put it on there and take a picture of it and then take it away. That is awesome. Like that's my biggest dream, to be able to walk into a comic book store and see my book right there on the shelf. Absolute genius. Chris, if you're watching, man, you're a genius.
Well, hopefully one day very soon you'll have that. And you know what? Truthfully, Will, you've gone through the gambit. You've gotten to my last question for you. Very easy question. What do you want your fans to know?
Oh, that's not an easy question. That's actually very hard. I want my fans to know that I'm always going to be writing stories for them. Doesn't matter if I'm 30. How old am I? 32? 33? I don't even remember. I was born in the 80s. That's all you need to know. As long as I'm alive, I'm going to be writing stories for you guys, and I want you guys to enjoy them. If you're having a bad day, maybe work didn't go well, or you crashed your car, I want you to know that I have a book for you that is going to take your mind off of that, and it's going to put you at ease for 20 or 30 pages or so, however long it is. My primary goal, and I've said this probably 20 times in this interview, my primary purpose on this planet is to tell entertaining and engaging stories. As long as I'm able to fulfill that for you, then I've done my job. Nothing else really matters in terms of what I want to do, in terms of writing. Let's say that because, I have a new baby girl and she means the world to me. But I want people to know that I'm here to write them stories, and I'm going to keep on doing it until the day that I die. So enjoy them, and I hope you guys do enjoy them.
Beautiful. That is fantastically said. Well, thank you very much for that. And congratulations on your new baby girl.
Thank you. I can hear her wailing right now, but I think her mom is on the prowl right now. So I think mama got her to calm down.
Perfect. Well, again, Will, thanks so much for taking the time to come on the show. It was an absolute blast to speak with you.
Thank you for having me. We're going to have to do this again. I mean, I thought, and I know that I probably should have looked, but I thought that I was the only one doing these sorts of interviews with other creators. Like when I spoke to Chris and he was, popping up on all these channels, I'm like, whoa, there's more. Well, I need to get into this. And I think you, me, and a few other people like Sir Talks a Lot, we all need to get together and just have a hangout and talk and, get these independent comic creators out there and get them looking in the forefront of all this stuff, because like I said, they work really hard and they don't get a lot of rep. And I think for what they're able to do and what they're able to accomplish, I think you, me, and everybody else who runs the show for them should, I guess for lack of better words, brainstorm ideas to help these guys get a little bit more exposure. It'll be great. It'll be fun. So I'm glad I met you, man. You seem like a really cool guy.
Thank you. And so do you. And you know what? That sounds really good. Let's connect some more on that.
Yeah, man. Obviously, you have like Instagram and Twitter and all that fun stuff. Yeah.
Wednesday Night Reviews or Wednesday NR. Absolutely.
All right, I'll give you a follow over there, and we can talk because I know a lot of in the last, I don't know, maybe month. I've been talking to a ton of other people who have their own shows, and I'm like, yo, I didn't realize you guys were out here doing this like this. I thought I was the only one. So I'm like, okay, cool. Well, we need to start up like a guild or something, you know, to help other creators get out there. So yeah, man, you can expect a follow from me on Instagram, and we can gather up everybody else and just see what we can do for all these guys.
Beautiful. Let's do it.
All right.
Well, folks, absolutely. Thanks for tuning in. As always, hit that like, hit subscribe, and support your local comic shops. And we'll see you next time.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day. Yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns. Can't find issue 2? Yeah. Collector problems, cliffhangers, mysteries. You need answers. When did Batman become Green Lantern? I get it. True believer, not lying. Always up for an awesome summer crossover.